New York City woman refused to tip her waiter, but left something much more valuable behind.
But before we start, please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an upload from us. Also, leave a like right now.
The story of Armando Markaj and Karen Vinacour, two complete strangers who were connected by an amazing twist of fate, is not one you hear very often. Markaj was a struggling waiter working at an iconic New York City pizzeria when Vinacour came in, enjoyed her meal, and left without tipping him. But what he did after ended up changing her life as he noticed she left something behind much more valuable than a tip. Working at Patsy's Pizzeria is a badge of honor for anyone who has an ambition to pursue a career in this industry, but that wasn't exactly the case with waiter Armando Markaj. The 27-year-old medical student was working his way through school, and he took the best job that came his way. Prices in NYC are sky high, so he decided to help with tuition and rent by getting a job. Patsy's was a well-known establishment, so he expected great tips from its A-list customers. This incredible viral story takes us to one of the most iconic pizza places in New York City, Patsy's Pizzeria, who was named after its founder Pascal Patsy Lancieri, who opened the doors of this NYC landmark to the public in 1933. It didn't take long for Patsy's to establish itself as one of the best pizzerias in the Big Apple, with locals and tourists alike. After all, it was one of New York's earliest pizza places, along with the likes of Lombardi's, Totano's, and John's. Patsy's Pizzeria was located in the predominantly Italian neighborhood of East Harlem, and it originally catered to the growing population of Italian immigrants in NYC. They were drawn to its family atmosphere and delicious cuisine that reminded them of their homeland. Lancieri learned his craft while working at Lombardi's and quickly started serving brick oven pizza at his own restaurant. Patsy's had also been credited for being one of the first pizzerias that introduced the traditional thin crust pizza that New York City is now known for. And it's also home of the incredible story you're about to listen to. Saturdays tend to be pretty busy at any restaurant, no matter how famous, and Patsy's Pizzeria was no exception. Markaj was running around all day to make the customers happy and get the orders to their tables in time. He thought he's ready for anything life will throw his way because there's nothing that can surprise you when you work at Patsy's for a while. Loud tourists, chatty locals, and A-list stars all enjoy their pizza, but it turned out there was one customer he wasn't ready to serve. When Karen Vinacour walked through the doors of Patsy's Pizzeria, Markaj couldn't have possibly predicted they'll end up being bonded for life. He approached her like any other customer and didn't expect he'd remember her face long after serving her food. To make things even worse, their conversation wasn't off to a good start due to one innocent remark that Markaj made during their brief interaction. So how did they end up forming a special connection that forever changed the course of Vinacour's life? Karen Vinacour didn't go to Patsy's on her own on that fateful Saturday. She was there with her daughter after they looked at a condo she wanted to buy. It was somewhat of a celebratory lunch because she was ready to make a down payment for her new home. Patsy's Pizzeria had a great reputation for years, so they decided to check out what their signature thin crust pizza was all about. After all, they were already in East Harlem and there was no better place to go than here. Patsy's Pizzeria has been around for almost a century, and proofs of its long history can be found all over its walls. The original East Harlem location features countless photos of famous people who visited this pizza place over the years. Taking photos of celebrities who gave Patsy's their seal of approval is one of the longest traditions that this NYC landmark is known for. It's also part of the reason why this pizzeria went viral in 2019, but not in the way most people would expect. Like everyone else who had the pleasure to eat at Patsy's, Vinacour and her daughter immediately noticed the dozens of photos that graced the walls of this pizza place. They took a moment to examine them and noticed a pattern that didn't sit well with them. Despite the fact that many famous people dined at this restaurant over the past 9 decades, Vinacour noticed most of those photographed by the owners were men. They didn't know what to make of it and decided to ask their waiter to explain the lack of diversity on the wall. Once Markaj came back with their order, Vinacour and her daughter decided to inquire about the lack of women on the walls. He never gave it much thought before and made what seemed like an innocent joke instead of providing them with a real answer. "There's a bunch of women," and she goes, "Not as much as there should be." "Well, summer is coming, probably women don't like to eat pizza as much. You know, sense of humor," recalled Markaj while chatting with ABC7. Vinacour and her daughter didn't find his joke as funny as he did. It bothered them even more than the lack of photos of women on the wall, and they couldn't properly enjoy their meal after this little exchange. Karen Vinacour, who has dedicated most of her retirement to volunteering with charities in Laos to help underprivileged women and children, didn't find his comment very amusing. She worked side by side with many great women who were capable of amazing things, and eating pizza was certainly one of them. Once they were done with their meal, Vinacour and her daughter decided to do something pretty unusual. Exiting a restaurant without leaving a tip is considered extremely rude, but they did it anyway after Markaj's joke had left them puzzled. The consensus of opinion was not to give him a tip, and we wrote on the note, "Women eat pizza, and by the way, have you heard that women don't leave tips?" Vinacour later told ABC7. Markaj didn't have time to waste thinking about what he did to offend Vinacour and her daughter because it was another busy Saturday and Patsy's was more crowded than ever. He had to act quickly and focus on other pizza lovers who were patiently waiting for their orders. He approached Vinacour's table and cleaned up everything the mother and daughter left behind. The tip was missing, but it took a couple of seconds for Markaj to realize he was holding something much more valuable in his hands. It was such a hectic day that Markaj wanted to throw everything away and get back to work with other customers, but he noticed that Vinacour left an envelope behind. "I was very close to taking everything left on the table and throwing it out when I saw an envelope. I just pulled up the flap and it said Citibank and I thought it was important. So I ran out to the street to look for her, but she was gone," the waiter told NY Daily News. Markaj couldn't believe his eyes when he opened the envelope and saw what was inside. It wasn't just a random piece of paper that Vinacour left on the table because it was worthless, but a cashier check worth $424,000. If you're unsure what a cashier's check is, it's basically a check that's treated as guaranteed funds because the bank, rather than the purchaser, is the one responsible for paying the amount. It's commonly required for real estate transactions. In any other case, Markaj would simply put things left behind by the customers in the lost and found box, but he wasn't going to do that with almost $500,000. He immediately went to the owner Frank Brija so they could figure out their next step together. Vinacour didn't realize her check was missing till Sunday night when she unzipped the inner compartment of her purse and noticed it empty. She went to a nearby Citibank's branch next morning, but they informed her there was no way of getting it back. They said they couldn't immediately cancel it because it was a cashier's check. "I would have to wait at least 3 months before they could even start the process, and only if someone didn't cash it in the meantime. My world just collapsed," recalled Vinacour in an interview with NY Daily News. Vinacour couldn't just let her life savings go down the drain, and she decided to do everything in her power to get the check back. She desperately wanted to buy a condo so she could finally have a place of her own, and that was impossible without this check. She immediately contacted her daughter and the real estate broker who was with them on Saturday in hopes they'd remember where she left it. When that didn't work, Vinacour started searching through the household trash, hoping the check was there. Every time people lose something valuable, their first instinct is to retrace their steps, and that's exactly what Vinacour did after realizing her check wasn't in the trash. She headed to East Harlem, hoping it was still at one of the places she visited on Saturday. While Vinacour was rushing around the city looking for her check, this valuable piece of paper was safely tucked away in East Harlem Patsy's location. Owner Frank Brija was certain someone will come looking for it because even a billionaire would miss that kind of money. But after a couple days had passed and no one showed up, Brija started worrying. Since her name was printed on the check, Brija came up with a great idea. He asked his son Adam to check for Karen Vinacour online. It didn't take them long to track down Vinacour, and she jumped in a cab and hitched a ride to Patsy's right after receiving their call. She was head over heels after being reunited with her check and couldn't thank Markaj enough for keeping it despite the fact that she didn't treat him with kindness. Vinacour immediately apologized to Markaj for not tipping him and admitted it wasn't her best moment. She said her daughter is kind of feisty, so they decided to not leave him a tip because they both disliked his comment. "I'm so grateful that the insult that we gave him didn't prevent him from doing the right thing," the woman told ABC7 after coming back to Patsy's to pick up the $424,000 check that she's been desperately searching for. During Vinacour's second visit to Patsy's, owner Frank Brija took a moment to point out that their wall actually featured many photos of female stars. Vinacour's visit felt like the perfect opportunity to add one more, so he asked to take a picture with her that day so she could always remember this special moment. Markaj accepted Vinacour's gratitude and apology, but he rejected her offer to reward him financially. She decided to give him a gift certificate for education supplies instead, but an opportunity to help other people was a gift in itself. It would have been dramatic for a lot of people. She was in tears. She was super excited that someone had found it and kept it. Small details like this define us as humans. It's just a small gesture, Markaj later told ABC7.